Welcome, everyone. We have in store a 20-minute rapid-fire debate. We're going to try to keep some spicy takes, I hope, and it is very important. There were some of the themes touched on by the previous panel, I noticed, but for the future of Bitcoin, a very important topic, which is scaling. In fact, at the start of the Permissionless conference today, the Blockworks co-founder Mike Ippolito sort of set out a theme that he termed the builder's itch, which was imagining a sort of general dissatisfaction with the status quo and trying to see how we could improve the future. And well, my two debaters here are at the forefront of the future of Bitcoin here. So I'm joined by, on my immediate left, Willem Schroé from Botanics Labs, the Bitcoin EVM sidechain, Bitcoin secured EVM sidechain, and Gautam from Alpen Labs, CEO, that's building a ZK rollup. Both of you guys have very different sort of visions for what is the best way to scale, how to bring liquidity and utility to the Bitcoin, building on the Bitcoin network, and also for Bitcoin, the asset. So let's get into it. This format will start off with some opening statements, 2 minutes. And then we'll move on to some direct questions and some rapid-fire questions after that. So to start us off, 2 minutes. Let's start with Willem. Why is your favorite approach the best path to scale Bitcoin?
Sounds good. Hey everyone, Willem from Botanics. How best to scale Bitcoin? Well, forget everything you know about Ethereum layer 2s. Forget it all and start from the start. What do we need to scale Bitcoin? And I believe 30 years from now, Bitcoin is actual money. You will use it as your dollars today. You'll have a financial system, banks, trading, stocks, everything, a financial system running on Bitcoin, right? How do you want that financial system to look like? We know Bitcoin on the base layer, you cannot have a financial system there. So that financial system will live on a Bitcoin layer 2. How do you want that to look like? Do you want it to be centralized? Do you want it to be decentralized? Completely different compared to Ethereum, because on Ethereum, you can have a decentralized financial system on Ethereum mainnet. Not so much for Bitcoin. That's why we absolutely believe Bitcoin needs a decentralized layer 2. The most important aspect of scaling is censorship resistance. You don't want any government to suddenly ban someone else from the financial system. I don't want to be banned from the financial system. You don't want any government to ban just certain groups of people from the financial system. So your Bitcoin layer 2 needs to be absolutely decentralized. That's why we're building what we call spider chains. We announced our federation. We start with 16. We'll have decentralized sequencers from day one. That will scale next year to 100. And then eventually, we'll have hundreds of thousands of nodes for that Bitcoin layer 2. Purely connected to Bitcoin, so we're not connected to Ethereum like others are in the space, only Bitcoin.
Yeah, so hi guys, Sims from Alpen Labs. I think let's make this debate a little bit spicy. So maybe I'll start out saying, I think decentralization is a bit of a misleading thing. I think that that's not what we should be really talking about. I think it's a means to an end. I think that what we really need and how Bitcoin scales is, the goals here are actually more about, as you said, censorship resistance, but decentralization is a design strategy towards it. It's not the only way to get that, along with verifiability. Like trust. I don't want my funds to be stolen, seized, and I don't want my transactions to be censored. Those are the goals, and decentralization is a strategy that gets us there, but we have new tools, things like zero-knowledge proofs that enable, for example, immediate verifiability. Don't trust, but verify. You can have a single party that runs transactions, executes transactions, and you don't even need to trust, put your trust, even if it's a single party, even if that part is not decentralized, you still have verifiability in that they cannot steal your funds, they cannot seize your funds. And so we can lean into new cryptographic tools, not completely new, but now practical. I mean, zero-knowledge proofs have been around for decades. I think I saw Eli Ben Sasson around here. You know, he's been working on this for over 2 decades. So the heart of where I see Bitcoin scaling going is verifiability, don't trust any single party, and censorship resistance. And I think that zero-knowledge proofs allows us to build that. And so at Alpen Labs, we're building our solution, scaling solution, layer 2, is leveraging these kinds of cryptographic primitives, building rollups, adding expressivity, programmability, privacy on Bitcoin.
Okay, let's dig into now trust and verifiability a bit. Today, what is your weakest trust assumption, and how do you plan to solve that in the future? Say with Sims.
The weakest trust assumption. Yeah. So currently, our system, as it goes live, will have an operator that is sequencing or kind of building blocks on the layer 2. It's a single operator. It's going to be run by Alpen Labs. You don't have to trust us because we generate zero-knowledge proofs. They're verified, et cetera. So we can't steal your funds even with that single operator. But there is the ability to censor, like that we would be able to censor, just on that alone. There are mechanisms that allow for better censorship properties of that entire layer 2. So we have the ability for users to force include a certain transaction. If in case Alpen Labs, our sequencer, is censoring your transaction, you can force us to by publishing directly on layer 1. But that is not, it's more limited. It's limited to certain types of transactions. And over time, we would need to decentralize. So I would say that assumption of, Alpen Labs will not censor everything is maybe one at launch that we would.
Okay, same question to you, and then we'll have a chance for rebuttals.
Oh, okay. So first argument, no rebuttal yet?
Yeah, why don't you first, go to the question, and then we'll do a round of rebuttals.
Okay. So the single biggest assumption of any decentralized network is how actually decentralized is it? Like Bitcoin in the early days, day 5, it was not decentralized at all, and so it was not secure. And so you get your security from how decentralized you are. And the same thing for Botanics. We're very transparent on that. We're very open. You can look everything up, who the node operators are. One cool thing about Botanics is we're actually no longer in control. Like, we build a network, we just run one of the nodes. And so if Botanics ceases to exist, the network still runs. That's a decentralized network.
I guess on this point, what is Botanics, what is the assumption you make in terms of, can continue running? I mean, you mentioned one party, Botanics, if it ceases to exist. I mean, in that case, I could argue, Alpen as an operator, if we cease to exist, there are mechanisms for if we haven't posted any updates to the layer 2, there's a sequencer fallback, someone else can take over. So, I could argue it's the same thing, but I guess how resilient is, up to how many people can kind of disappear until your system still works?
That actually goes into my rebuttal for your argument. I don't think the single weakest argument against rollups or the single biggest risk factor is a centralized sequencer. I absolutely do not believe that. I think the single biggest risk is the Security Council. You have a multi-sig that can upgrade everything, the whole system, and can steal all the Bitcoin. That is your single biggest attack factor. And so in your case, you're saying, oh, but someone else can start the sequencing, but who owns the keys? And what's the case in most of the rollups is that the keys are actually owned by that single organization. So that argument that someone else could take over is just not true. And then to come back to your second piece is for Botanics, we have today a 12 out of 16, which means 4 parties can actually disappear completely, go offline, or get cut off of the internet. We have optimized for global spread out through jurisdictions, and the network still runs.
I mean, I would argue, can I do a rebuttal on the rebuttal? So yes, when we launch, we will have a security council that governs updates, but that council, while it's a multi-sig, is only able to do upgrades with a time delay. That means if your funds are in our layer 2, you still have the ability to withdraw that in the time delay before any upgrade can happen. This would not be the case if, your multi-sig in Botanics wants to do an update, it would be instantly updated, or if the multi-sig is compromised in Botanics, the funds could immediately be lost, right? Or it could be stolen. In our situation, it is still don't trust, verify, and in regards to updates, you have a time window in place, not even enforced by us, but enforced by code that allows you to withdraw, in time. So I would argue that even with a, so-called training wheels or like a security upgrade multi-sig in place, the overall safety of the roll-up based layer 2 is still stronger than a multi-sig being compromised within Botanics.
Okay, I think we could continue down this road, but in the interest of time, let's pivot to developers and users. Who is your target audience? Who's going to build on your platform? Why and why now? And a corollary to that, what is your killer app? Willem?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think most people in the whole of crypto space are focused on a small group of users focused on crypto Twitter. We're actually targeting Bitcoiners, people who are in the ideological fight to make Bitcoin the money, who want to separate money and state, who want to use Bitcoin as money. That's what I believe our users will be. That's what I think the actual people using our platform, they will want to borrow stablecoins against their Bitcoin. They want to send Bitcoin globally. They want to trade Bitcoin, but they only want to do it on Bitcoin itself. In terms of applications, we've done already quite some big announcements. So we're working together with GMX, Dolomite, Chainlink, and quite a few others. So basically a full-blown DeFi ecosystem. And I think one of the interesting pieces of Botanics is that you'll actually get real Bitcoin yield. So Bitcoin only, you get the yield in Bitcoin, no other tokens, no points, just direct Bitcoin yield.
I would echo kind of similar type of ecosystem. I mean, the use case that we envision here is like, look, Bitcoin is massive, but it's very limited in terms of what you can do today without having to give up the core properties of Bitcoin. You have to go, you want to borrow dollars against Bitcoin. You want liquidity or leverage or anything like that. This is a massive market, and your options are you go, to a centralized provider, either giving up your key entirely to, great services, but still you're giving it to Ledin, or you're giving it to Unchained, or you're giving it to Coinbase, and you're getting charged outrageous rates in this kind of bilateral borrow-lend setting. You're getting 15% rates to borrow against your Bitcoin, whereas on-chain, this is significantly less. Capital formation is just much more efficient. It can't be done on Bitcoin due to the lack of programmability directly on layer 1, but this is an example of an opportunity for layer 2. So we're really excited about borrow lend as an application. We think that rate can be driven down to under 5%. You could even get fixed rate loans, and best yet, you don't even have to give up the custody of your Bitcoin to actually access this. That is one use case. We have ecosystem of probably launching with over 24 different partners into various phases of testnet, and then going into mainnet this year. We have, if you just looking at Ethereum, some of the biggest transaction and application in DeFi actually uses more BTC than even ETH in a lot of cases. Look at Morpho, which is a borrow lend protocol Coinbase recently partnered with. They have more CBBTC and WBTC as a collateral than even ETH. And it's only really on Ethereum and Base. And so we think there's an enormous demand for anyone that wants to use BTC as a collateral, as money, and we're seeing some of the best protocols get excited about that. And in terms of how users access this, there will be new wallets, but we also want to meet users where they are. Embed integrations directly into wallets, custodians, exchanges. And so, kind of imagine, maybe you use Casa, or you use, Anchorage or some other custodian, being able to have these use cases powered by on-chain BTC on Bitcoin layer 2 in a click directly embedded into that platform. We want to meet the users where they are, and so that's definitely the distribution strategy that we're excited about.
Okay, let's do some rapid fire questions. Try to keep your answers to a couple of sentences. Willem, I'll start with you. Does Botanic's design assume that Bitcoin itself remains unchanged, or how would soft forks that add, for example, CTV, which would help Bitcoin rollups, impact your roadmap?
Yeah, we designed the spider chain to be fully possible with Bitcoin as is, so we don't need changes. Bitcoiners typically don't want any changes anymore. That said, I'm personally a big fan of zero knowledge proofs, and you can actually include those parts in the spider chain, but you would need a CTV plus CAT for that.
Okay, Sims, Robin Linus, the inventor of BitVM, recently called it a clunky workaround to enable things you should actually enable via a soft fork, and hacks piled upon hacks. Do you agree?
I'd say that, yes, I agree with the sentiment that we should have some kind of covenant soft forks. This reduces further the trust assumptions, which is one of N right now. In terms of, hacks on top of hacks, like I think that there's a lot of cryptography here, and we built a team around cryptographic experts, and we'll be validating all of that. And what's kind of neat about BitVM in this regard is, even if there's a protocol risk, even if there's, then it has to be one of the entities that is, one of N entities that has to compromise that system. It's not anyone can go and compromise a risk factor there. I think that adds a lot to the security. And with regards to Robin's comment on hacks, we're actually moving away from BitVM 2 entirely at Alpen Labs. We have a completely new, it's 100 to 200x better solution to BitVM. It is not BitVM that we're actually launching into mainnet. It is a solution based on garbled circuits, which is much, much simpler and cleaner.
All right, it's time for closing statements. 90 seconds. Yeah, anything that we haven't discussed that's top of mind, or how do you think that Bitcoin's next act will be defined? Next act.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Bitcoin is like right in the middle as a store of value now. You've got all these centralized companies, ETFs, borrowing companies that are very, very centralized. On the other hand, you have Ethereum, the on-chain world, way more efficient, on-chain, permissionless, transparent, but not in Bitcoin. And so we saw the whole hype of Bitcoin layer 2s a year ago. A bunch came out of that. A lot of people were actually just building Ethereum rollups. But the people actually building Bitcoin layer 2s, that of course is something net new that takes a while. And they're actually coming online in the next few months. And for us specifically, it's much, much, much closer than that. And so this is a whole new world actually opening up. This is actual Bitcoin yield, and this will absolutely pick up. This transforms Bitcoin from a store of value into actually a medium of exchange in the financial system. And the most interesting part is it's fully interoperable with Lightning, so you can actually see financial markets and payments very closely come together. I actually paid yesterday a Lightning invoice with my Botanics wallet, and it worked smoothly, so you can fund your Lightning wallet very easily. And so, yeah, it's massively picking up.
I mean, I just want to say as a closing remark, I couldn't be more excited where we are right now with Bitcoin scaling. I think, I have a lot of respect for Willem and Botanics, as well as a bunch of other teams just trying things and making sure that Bitcoin scaling is not going to be compromised by a single trusted party that can censor. We need it to be more useful, more accessible, and I think there's been years actually at this point of research development all coming to a bunch of mainnet launches happening this year, and like honestly, like we're seeing some of the biggest stablecoin issuers to the biggest applications gung-ho about Bitcoin, and yeah, I couldn't be more excited. I think it's going to be a really fun year, and I think next year we're going to see some seismic shifts into how people think about Bitcoin.
And if you would like to stay up to date on Bitcoin scaling, one way you can do that is by following the 0x Research newsletter, of which I'm the editor. You can find that at blockworks.co/newsletter. Thank you both very much for this discussion.
Thank you.
And thanks for your attention.